Welcome to book club, everybody. Whee! Today's chapter is The Three Marks of Existence and the Four Noble Truths. If any of you've been at all interested in Buddhism over the course of your lifetime, you probably are fairly aware of these concepts.
Yeah.
The world is afflicted by death and decay, but the wise do not grieve, having realized the nature of the world. Quote Buddha. Okay. So a question. I here's a poor way to start a discussion, but here you are. What do you think marks existence?
Suffering.
Suffering.
Oh my goodness.
Hello, Socrateser.
Socrateser. Still a good username. Still such a good
Alright.
username.
People today.
We do. One of the last talks we had, well, the talk before the last one was really good. Because the last one I was alone.
Yeah.
Oof.
It happens. Sometimes
Sorry,
life,
Jess.
it's okay. It's fine. I don't mind. It's just that's the week where I just end up ranting to myself for like 30 minutes. um, Socrates, off the top of your head, what do you think marks existence? What does it mean to exist?
That's deep, bro.
Well, I'm not sure how to answer that in an original way, since a lot of my philosophy has been informed by what I know of the sutra and stuff.
Right. I think we're all in that boat a little bit. Well, I'm here to tell all of you that there are three marks of existence. Who's shocked? Anybody? Nobody. Um, impermanence, not self, and suffering. So let's talk impermanence first. What does it mean for something to be impermanent?
It changes.
Change, you say?
Oh my god.
Look, if you guys aren't gonna be chatty, I gotta do it for you. And this is what it looks like.
You're amazing, Jess. You are amazing, truly.
Thank you, thank you. Um, in the Buddhist worldview, this applies to every single thing in the universe.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
Generally stressed.
Ooh, tell me
Really?
more.
Knowing this is usually supposed to be a sign of a lack of suffering, so
Hmm.
uh, I'd like to hear these views.
So I thought this chapter brought up a really interesting point of how, on the surface, we think we want all good things. You know, we want good situations, achievements, health, blah blah blah, and we want them all to be perfectly permanent. Um, but that, and that we become upset when things change, and then we experience suffering. And then the Buddhist view comes in and says something along the lines of that when you recognize this impermanence and that changes the nature of everything, we suffer less because we accept the change. I also would like add on that to some degree, if you don't know suffering, it's hard to fully appreciate the good. Like if you don't know any level of not happy or not content or not, or I guess suffering really encompasses it as a word. If you don't know an ounce of suffering, it's hard to recognize when you're not.
that's I mean that's exactly the explanation given as to why the human realm is best here in the Dharma,
Mm-hmm.
not the realms of the devas or any below us. Well, the devas above us or any below us.
I haven't heard that before. It sounds interesting.
Yeah, because it said that the only suffering in like the highest levels of the devas is the fact that it has to end at some point.
Can you tell me what a deva is?
It's the Hindu equivalent of a god.
Oh, okay, okay,
So
yeah.
Vishnu, Shiva, Brahma, Indra, Rudra, Agni, and those are all devas.
Okay. All right, that makes sense again. I was at first I was like, what kind of divas are in the sky? Are these like the muses? I had a whole like Greek mythology thing going on in my head for a second.
Well, I don't know if they're like in the sky above us, but in the cosmology of things, they're said to be like on the levels above us on the Buddhist equivalent of the world tree, Mount Sumeru.
Okay. I'm gonna be straight up front with you, Socrateser. I don't know what that is either.
The world tree, Yggdrasil. Yggdrasil is the world tree in Norse mythology, said to come in different realms of the gods.
Neat.
But anyway,
We're talking about impermanence and how it causes suffering. Um, anybody else?
Well, it's only suffering because we want it to be permanent. It's our
It's the want
focus,
of the permanence. Yeah.
right? It's our focus on things not changing that is the issue rather than the fact that things change.
Yeah. That makes sense. Which is why when you accept the suffering and accept that things change, you suffer less.
Right. The suffering is only because of the dissonance between reality and your expectations of reality.
Right. My favorite concept to talk about, unmet expectations. Unmet expectations cause so many problems in like every realm of the world in your life. Anyway, so I guess I really believe in the three marks of existence. If I really think about it, like they are core tenets of my belief system. Is if you can let go of your expectations of what life should be like, you're a lot happier.
Well, that's the beauty of these is that they are marks of existence such that they are self-evident and anyone can see it if they know how to look.
Yeah.
It's not even a belief, it's just a recognition.
Mhm.
You know, it's beyond I believe this. Like I can believe in Santa, but this is actually something I can see.
You're like recognizing that this is a fact.
Right.
Mhm. I do enjoy that quite a lot because even though maybe the words are specific to Buddhism, the concepts are not, and so,
Right.
yeah.
I mean, even not self. That was explained when it comes to Western philosophy with David Hume's bundle theory.
Bundle theory.
That we are just a bundle of different things, like uh, pretty much exactly boiling down to the five skandha, five aggregates: form, perception, consciousness. I can't remember what are the other two. There's form, perception, consciousness, and
Senses.
I don't know, man. You're bringing me a lot of vocab words today.
yeah. But yeah, it's that we are just we think we're more than these things that make us up, but like there's
Mhm.
I'm not explaining this well, but like we come together just because these different aggregates come together, but we are not really more than those. even though we think we are.
I think I'll have to think on that.
I mean, it comes down to like dependent origination. It's just because those different things have
Okay,
come
there you
together
go.
in this.
Another vocab word. I have no idea what that is. I think Socrates is beginning to doubt my validity as a leader of book club.
Oh no, nothing like that. Just I think of these things in terms of the terms used in the different texts,
Mm-hmm.
and
My brain is like a sieve. Things just fall off and out of my head a lot. So even if I've come across these vocab words before or these specific terminology you're using, I have long since released them into the world again. It's very interesting though. So with the not self, you were saying that it was bundled together with
yeah,
these.
we think there's a self, but there's no permanent soul to be found in any of those aggregates or any combination of those.
Mm-hmm. I can hear crickets, Romel.
I know, right? Sorry, my mom
But
called.
but in the Buddhist concept, we would be pushed to think of ourselves as not the same as our bodies. Not, I don't think necessarily.
No, I mean like it. It's not like just the aggregates aren't limited to the physical.
Okay.
It's basically all of experience. Any way you can try and formulate or
Yeah.
categorize it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. There's form, sensation, perception, consciousness, and then I still can't remember the last one.
Yeah, I have a hard time remembering them too. But it's got a corollary in Hinduism with that which is seen is not the seer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The
So
witness.
right. So with this, it's like, okay, there are all of these things I can use to identify as myself, but if I see them as
Mm-hmm.
identifiers, that's not actually me. That's just what I'm putting on.
The question comes about when the consciousness sees itself.
Fancy.
Because the consciousness is the thing that's doing the recognizing, but it can also see itself.
In my experience, the eye can't see the eye, but it can be verified through the act of sight.
Mm-hmm.
But just as a knife can't cut itself, fire can't burn itself, I don't know that the seer can see itself.
Mm-hmm.
This is getting to. I think this is actually the line of thought Descartes was getting at when he was like setting out to see what he could prove and disprove, and the only thing he couldn't disprove was his own consciousness.
Right.
I think, therefore I am.
Yes.
Cool. Yeah, I think in different terms, there's a lot of reasons to dissociate yourself from a lot of your labels to get a little more secular with my word use. Um, I think that I see this a lot with my student population who I work with is they get caught up in like, well, I'm not an artist or I'm not a drawer or I'm not, and you get caught up in a label, so then you're like self performing for those labels, if that makes sense. um I think in that same way you get caught up in a narrative of what those labels are to you, and I when you don't I think it goes back to those expectations that we were talking about with the first section, because we're not going to 100% of the time fit the labels we've made for ourselves, ironically. And so then that's going to cause more suffering. And I don't know if I just made that more confusing for anybody, but that's kind of, I think, the level I take it on.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense.
So that was just something I was thinking about for my own perceptions. We recognize the limits of these ways of thinking in ourselves. Allows us to free ourselves from many sources of suffering. Yay! Let's talk about suffering.
My favorite topic!
Yay! Can you see the Kermit hands in your head like I can?
You know, it's really interesting, something that you really pointed out in terms of expectation. Even as a Buddhist, we can't expect enlightenment, therefore enlightenment won't come. You know, because that creates a whole egoic force field around your practice.
Ooh.
Right? I was reading something recently, forgot the name of the book, but it's the story of Siddhartha. And it was saying something to the extent where the seeking of too much knowledge is almost like killing knowledge itself. And I thought that was really profound.
It's certainly an interesting way to start to view it.
Yeah.
Because
there has to be a humanistic approach to all of this, right?
Yeah.
Because once we see it from the perspective of a human and try to really embrace it from a place of vulnerability and open-heartedness, then it kind of becomes more relatable, all these type of topics. The no self, the expectation, suffering itself.
Mm-hmm.
I think for myself, I feel like I've created some of my own suffering. So we are the creators of that narrative as well.
Yeah. Well, and I think when we open ourselves to the realities of our situations, we're able to see how in many ways we create a ton of our own suffering, you know?
Right.
I think that's true for pretty much everyone.
We are the only ones that create our suffering.
Yeah, that's all. I think depending on where somebody is at in their journey, I don't know that I would say that to them out loud. I would want them to get there and infer it.
Yeah, no. But it's important to take responsibility for your own suffering. Because
Absolutely, yeah.
Hell yeah. Hell yeah. That is so important. That's actually vital. That is a vital thing that, you know, every human has to be able to comprehend.
Mm-hmm.
You know, aside from Buddhism, you know, it's just a vital thing.
Yes. Realizing the extent with which you color your own perception of circumstances and just everything going on around you. It's really interesting. Rawr.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys are doing great. We're so good at talking about Dharma. Okay, so human beings spend much of their time trying to avoid recognizing that they suffer. They want to persist in their beliefs that happiness and achievement can be attained and made permanent. Do you feel like... Huh?
Sure do.
Yup. That seems true. I sense nothing wrong here. This is correct.
Carry on.
Oh, what was I thinking? Oh, yes. So, when I read the sentence, it's really interesting to me to think about how desperately we cling to this desired state of happiness. And I kind of often also really think about what circumstances lead people to fall so deeply into it. I noticed that depending on life situations sometimes, and this isn't like a rule, there's no hard rule about this. But sometimes based on life situations, some people have a lower threshold of what it means to be happy, or they seem closer to getting it, I guess, like to letting go of that desire for permanence. Like they're still struggling with it, but there's something definitely closer depending on what life has kind of taken them through. And maybe that's not a worthwhile thought process, but I
You know,
have it.
it's interesting. When I first became an Nichiren Buddhist, the premise for them to try to convert me was chant for your happiness, chant to become happy, and I was like, what the fuck does that mean? Like, it took me at least 10 years to figure out like what that really actually comes from, you know, because systemically I was conditioned through parental, familial, society, you know, to believe happiness was something of material value,
Mhm.
right? You got your own place, you got a car, you finished college, you got a job, you're making an annual. Okay, that's happiness, right?
Yeah.
But then it became a turning point in my practice when I realized in a blink of an eye that can all go. So
Mm.
what really is the true value and purpose of happiness, right? So I think it really starts with really introspection and really figuring out like what does that happy feeling feel like. I recently had an event happen in my life that I was completely at the most happiest moment. I've never felt this feeling before. It was so intense that I was like, I came home and wrote like 3 chapters of a book that
Ooh.
I've been working on this book for a while. That's another topic. But like I just was like, wow, is this happiness? And then in a blink of an eye, a situation arose and boom, it was gone.
Hmm.
And I was like, whoa. And I was left with the residual effects of my ego saying, oh, that'll never happen again. You won't be happy. That's, you know,
Aw.
and it wasn't, it wasn't until I really embraced my, my daimoku or basically our prayers is that I was just like, you know what? I have to chant for this person's happiness, not let alone my own. So
Hmm.
I think that we also, I think happiness is not just something that's self-induced. I think it's something that we share in order for it to really resonate with our lives.
Mhm.
I'm sorry I sound muffled because I'm walking with a mask now.
You're okay.
Okay.
Um. Hmm. Yeah. I think that's a really good point. I know personally, at least, I am often faced with the circumstances where I need to be a little more external with my thought process, like towards other people. Um, as I think about what you're saying. Hmm. So yeah. So as always, many of my thought processes lead me back to my upbringing in the Christian belief system. And so I recall many times you'd be pushed into these ideas and these concepts and these verses from the Bible about praying for your enemy and showing kindness to your enemy even when they have scorned you. So um, and so these kind of verses are really pushed on a prepubescent population who is probably squabbling otherwise in the Christian church. And so I reflect on when these sorts of things come up and they really mimic what I've come to see in Buddhist culture or Buddhist words.
Philosophy.
Philosophy. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Words.
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I think about happiness, I think about a point where Shakyamuni, Siddhartha, holds up a lotus in front of all his community.
Mm,
And he just didn't say anything. He just held up the lotus, right? And they were like, oh, okay, like it was really amazing because you would think like, what would be going on in the mind of a human? Like, okay, flower, green. Like, I would be looking at the stem, the petals,
Mm-hmm.
you know. But really, the reason he held it up was to teach people about happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And all of a sudden, some people were crying. Some of the monks were crying. Some of the monks were joyous. It was the most amazing thing. And this man absolutely said nothing.
Hmm.
Just held up this flower. So I think that's really like what life is. We're being held flowers all around us, but it's really our own perception and our means to perceive it that really makes a lot of difference. Not only in our lives, but also in the lives of people around us.
Mm-hmm. Hmm. Yes. Very good. That is totally what I knew you were hopefully gonna get to. Um, I was fully aware. No, I'm kidding. Sorry, Sakura Teaser's name has got me in this like Socratic method brain. I was like, I can let that go. It's like I must lead the students, and I don't think I'm made to do that. It's not.
I think I want tacos.
Tacos sound
That's what
very enlightened right now.
I know, right?
So, we'll talk about it a little bit, Mel. So, one of the other things that it says is the Four Noble Truths. Let's go ahead and just go to that. I think we spent enough time on this first part. I've decided it.
Yay, the Four Noble Truths.
The Four Noble Truths. Heck yeah. They have a theme song now. Everybody loves the Four Noble Truths, right? Good.
Oh yeah.
So we're about to talk about them. Oh, poop.
I remember in my Buddhism I had several years ago that the translation, which we could read as Four Noble Truths, the original doesn't say that. It's like the English version makes it seem like, oh, it's the truths that are noble, but in the original it'll be like four truths for noble beings. Which I find,
I did not catch all of that. You broke up a little bit. Would you say it again?
yeah, but in the English text, it makes it seem like it's the truths that are noble, when in the original text, it's more easily read as like the four truths for noble, as in like noble beings.
Hmm. Interesting. Um,
Interesting to think about.
it is. It is. Um, so the first noble truth, reality is dukkha, which this word used to really confuse me. Um, really threw me off every time I would see it anywhere. Uh, or suffering. And so now in my mind, it is automatically translated to suffering. Um, but at first, that was not an easy thing for me to do. Um, it plays a central role in Buddhism, which is effectively what the three things of existence are. It's just all like, look, suffering. See all the suffering? And then the first noble truth is like, suffering! And if none of you believe that that's what it sounded like, then I say poo on you. Because I'd like to believe that I would have made Siddhartha laugh with my extreme enthusiasm for life. Um, so, then, we are gonna we talk about suffering. Um, No, these words quite. Huh?
I think it's amazing to start out with suffering because in the shared struggle, you kind of find a fundamental reason in your inner core to seek some type of knowledge or
Mm-hmm.
some type of truth. And this is what the Buddha was actually after. And it wasn't until he had an encounter with his suffering. Like, why is this happening? How is this happening? And what is this all this going on? Not
Mm-hmm.
only in my environment, but in my body. His body was changing, you know, everything around him was changing. His environment was changing. The people that he was around were changing. And so I think it's really important that they start off with suffering because that's something that is so profound. Once you figure that part out and know it for what it is, then everything around you starts to move and shape.
Mm-hmm. I agree. Yes.
Now, 5 years ago, I would have been like, oh God, suffering. Wow.
Please
But
no.
I think we're on a constant. Suffering is something that happens on a constant, you know. But it's something that always brings you back. Like I
Mm-hmm.
feel like it always brings me back to the core, you know, not only of my practice but of who I am. And I kind of celebrate it now. As before, I was a bit afraid of it. You know, I'm like, all right, this is happening. But then there's suffering of causation that you know we have to be really really accountable for it sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And then the chapter reemphasizes that by saying it's not just suffering, but a full range of experiences. That dukkha isn't just like this stagnant word. It's very versatile. That it can,
Hello.
but its common translation is that of suffering. So I found that interesting.
I find that a more accurate translation would be dissatisfactoriness.
Mm.
Dissatisfactoriness.
I heard that in grammar school, like, ooh, a long time ago. That word, dissatisfaction.
So fancy. Such a fancy word.
The
I
reason
know.
we use suffering is because it is commonly the most wide ranging word we have in English to describe uh, the variety of unpleasantnesses that we can experience. But if
Yes.
you look at anything that it's talking about, dukkha is unsatisfactory.
Mm-hmm.
That's why it's dukkha.
Hello.
It doesn't just have to do with like physical and mental pain. It's the sort of thing that like even in pleasure, even in the happiest moments, there is that dukkha in that it has to end at some point.
Mm.
Right. It's an existential dis-ease.
Yes. I
Mm.
think,
Oops.
I
It's
think the best way to translate that would be. Are you familiar with the German term Weltschmerz?
I didn't quite catch that.
Are you familiar with the German term Weltschmerz?
Your
Let's.
audio quality keeps changing. I'm still not quite getting it.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. I gotta keep it at a set distance from me.
Interesting.
Are you familiar with the German word Weltschmerz?
Ah, no.
Literally translated, it means world pain.
it means what?
World pain.
World pain.
Oh, it's really interesting. Nichiren Daishonin said he called it the salty taste. He wrote a whole gosho, meaning letters in Japanese, about this salty taste in Jambudvipa. It was really interesting. World pain. Wow.
Hmm. I think I think that if you're familiar with the term ennui, that's also from the
Ennui.
work.
Ah, yes, ennui. So ennui.
All right, I'm gonna put you guys on mute for a couple of minutes because I'm ordering my tacos.
Tacos. I'm offended. How dare.
Unless you want to hear me speak Spanish, the lady. Oh,
I am vaguely intrigued by the offer,
good.
but I respect if you would prefer not to.
Thank you.
um, so the second noble truth is desiring permanence, which is exactly what everybody was talking about earlier. Good job, guys.
We did it.
We did it. You won Buddhism.
Sorry, what did you say? Second truth is desiring permanence.
Yes.
Yeah, that is the root of all dukkha. That is what causes it.
Yes. Yes.
Clinging and wanting.
Yes.
I remember my professor in that Buddhism class put it a certain way that like the idea of the anatman seems to be an extension of that, in that if the root is I want, you can get rid of the want, but the anatman goes further and gets rid of the I that wants.
Yep.
Hmm.
In fact, it would be more accurate to say that there is just want. And there is
Yes.
no I that wants, but we fool ourselves into thinking it because we identify with the want and therefore say, I want.
Yes.
Fancy.
And then
We make it a part of ourselves when it is the ultimate nature is non-dual, so it's neither the self nor the other. But we fool ourselves into thinking it's either.
Mm-hmm. Yes. You guys are so smart. Number 3, Nirvana.
Ooh, I love that
It,
band.
Yeah, it's a good band. Um. So what about Nirvana? Why? Why?
Pretty
What?
cool.
Suffering can cease.
yes.
It is not permanent, much like everything else.
Mm.
So I remember a few years ago, I had a spontaneous insight into the nature of suffering, and I learned that suffering is simply wisdom that has been misperceived. And if you
Ooh.
look at it the right way, the suffering turns into wisdom,
Mm-hmm.
and you become grateful for your suffering because it shows you where you have left to work. And
Hello.
suffering is no
Yeah.
longer suffering. This is how
I
it
do.
is
I
transcended.
remember hearing it. I remember hearing that sort of sentiment put in that like we have to feel pain to know that there is room for growth. Like,
Yeah.
hmm.
The distinction here, what we're saying we can let go of in terms of suffering, is unnecessary pain. There will always be injury and sickness and death and taxes or whatever.
We may feel like momentary mental and physical pain, but the clinging is where the suffering comes in.
Right.
We think that this pain is permanent and we can't let it go.
That's why you looking at Google.
Oh my gosh. That was not. It just. Ah, poo. It did that thing
Oh,
again. Ah, okay. Hold on. Fixing it. I have something I'm doing with my hands on my desk, and it knocked my mouse, and I guess it exited out of my thing.
Well, dang.
I find doing something with my hands keeps my mind from wandering, so I'm more concentrated on the conversation. So, unfortunately, I chose something that spread out too far on my desk.
Do something with existence, Des.
Oh, trust me, I am. I stabbed myself at least twice in this process.
Hey, that's Ducka.
I'm having some first experience DECA going on right now. Do not worry.
all right. You're just proving that you exist.
Yeah, it's very important. Very, very, very important.
Take us back to where we were, Des.
This is where we were.
Transport us.
Done. We're already there.
Okay, great. I feel so good.
We were talking more about Nirvana. We were still on Nirvana.
Nirvana. Oh. I don't know yet how it is, but I hear it's pretty fun.
I hear it's neat. I think
It's really interesting. Like when I think about my Buddhist practice and I think about the Buddhism that I practice, I really have never have said to myself, "Oh, I want enlightenment. I'm going to get it."
I'm gonna do it.
I just been honestly, I've just been coasting and just letting things come to me. And sometimes you have those moments that you do experience some really serious dacha, really serious. And I think the reality of it is you have to go through these motions. They're so important for the unfolding of not only your practice but of your life. So I think Nirvana has a lot to do with the unfolding of your life. And I think the Buddha must have peeled a lot of layers, a lot of internal layers in order to reach it. You know. And that's very, very, very profound and interesting at the same time.
I agree.
And I love the band.
Also the band. I think we all agree we're into the band.
Yeah, it's funny. When I was a teenager, I always wanted a Nirvana T-shirt. I was like, "Mom, I want that T-shirt," and she's like, "No." I was like, "Why?"
No.
And then she got it for me for Christmas one. I was like, "Oh, that's all I wanted was this T-shirt."
Yay!
To be a child again, I love it.
Yeah. Someday. No, kidding. Mahayana teaches discuss Theravada in more detailed ways than Theravada does. Why is that?
Mahayana carried on where Theravada said, all right, this is enough.
All right, we're done.
And that is why it is called the lesser vehicle.
Yeah, Theravada is one of the Arhat or Arahant paths to find enlightenment and cease of suffering for yourself. Mahayana is like the ultimate goal. The ultimate goal, even beyond that, is not just getting to that level, but to the level that you are able to transmit the teachings to others. That being Buddhahood, and the way to get to Buddhahood is the Bodhisattva path.
Bodhisattva life.
Hashtag Bodhisattva
Yay!
life.
I'm a Bodhisattva of the earth. Yes, born again in this lifetime as a human being. I'm so fortunate.
2020.
True.
Oh my goodness. So here's where Buddhism makes me laugh, and I realize it comes from the oral tradition, but
Is it because it's got the word oral in it?
no.
Okay.
No. It is because the fourth noble truth is the Eightfold Path. It's a list, and then the fourth item on the list is another list.
They like lists.
They
Buddhists
love
are big on
lists in Buddhism, which I think is one of the reasons it called to me, because I also like lists.
I do too. That's funny you say that.
I like organization and lists, and this is, yeah, right up my alley. Love lists.
But you know what I do sometimes? Sometimes I mess up my apartment on purpose just to make sure I'm still living. I do it on purpose. I just mess it up for 2 days just so I could have something to reorganize all over, because it's sometimes you do kind of I get a little bit too structured, so I try to destructure it. All right, let me just destructure this.
Yeah, my husband would definitely say I get too structured a lot. You're very attached to my structure. Definitely one of my failings that I need to work on. He just said something of like, "It's not a failing, okay? Jeez." So then they're going to talk about the Eightfold Path in the next chapter, where they introduce notions of incarnation, karma, reincarnation, karma, nirvana, the Buddhist cosmology, and the way of thinking and feeling that impedes our ability to follow the Eightfold Path. So the Four Noble Truths to me are very concise, otherwise, of how, kind of just what they are, or it's like there's suffering. The desire for permanence is causing that suffering, and then it can stop, but then there's a way to make it stop, or get closer to making it stop. So that's nice and reassuring.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Totally.
Oh yeah.
Dharma.
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 So
Dharma.
I did like this one sentence. The fourth noble, well, two sentences. The fourth noble truth is that there is an eightfold path to enlightenment. From our perspective, this path is a paradox. Awakening is not created by anything. Enlightenment, your true nature, is already present. So this whole idea of like attaining enlightenment, or some sort of transcendence,
Mm-hmm.
is a misperception, and it leads to a lot of struggle, which
Well,
isn't necessary.
Well, and that's kind of what you were saying earlier, though. It's not about certain things, it's about recognizing what's already there.
Exactly.
And so that's a very similar issue, right?
It would seem to be, yes.
Yes. I'm sorry. I'm to make you confirm the thing I said like multiple times.
That's okay. What's the next page?
The next page is
Yeah.
the next chapter.
Oh,
Oh, girl, you breezed through that.
It's a very short chapter, but I like taking them these books one chapter at a time. One, I think it encourages participation more.
heck yeah.
People are less scared of a single chapter. Two, I think the concepts are worth fully discussing and really like trying to get a good sense on them.
I think it also allows for a lot of openness, like going chapter by chapter. That's amazing.
Yeah.
The one sentence that really hit my core was on page 81. It said, "We think, feel, and change constantly. Becoming too attached to certain beliefs about who we are or are not can be a source of suffering because it blinds us to the truth of continuous change." I thought that was the most funny. I said, "Whoa, if Ramel needed a little shake, that was the shake." Because we are victims of causation. It's all around us, right? But
Yeah.
at the same time, it's really about how we view causation and its reality and manifestations on a daily basis. So that's the most important part of all this.
Yeah.